Hello, everybody. We are going to finish the chapter that we started on Friday, which is called The Great Gum Machine. And then we are going to read the next chapter, which is called Along the Corridor. Now, if you think back to where we were last time, we had been following along with Violet Beauregard, who was chewing the gum that was a meal, and she had just gotten to what part of the meal? If you said dessert, you are correct. She had just gotten to dessert, and it was blueberry pie with cream. And what was happening to Violet? If you said she was turning colors, you were right. She wasn't turning pink or green or purple. She was turning blue. Blue like a blueberry. "Spit that gum out at once," ordered Mr. Beauregard. "Mercy! Save us!" yelled Mrs. Beauregard. "That girl's going blue and purple all over." Oh, she was turning purple. "Even her hair is changing color. Violet, you're turning violet, Violet. What is happening to you?" "I told you I hadn't gotten it quite right," said Mr. Wonka, shaking his head sadly. "I'll say you haven't," cried Mrs. Beauregard. "Just look at that girl now." Everybody was staring at Violet, and what a terrible, peculiar sight she was. Her face and hands and legs and neck, in fact, the skin all over her body, as well as her great big mop of curly hair, had turned a brilliant purplish blue, the color of blueberry juice. "It always goes wrong when we come to the dessert," sighed Mr. Wonka. "It's the blueberry pie that does it, but I'll get it right one day. You wait and see." "Violet!" screamed Mrs. Beauregard. "You're swelling up." "I feel sick," Violet said. "You're swelling up," screamed Mrs. Beauregard again. "I feel most peculiar," gasped Violet. "I'm not surprised," said Mr. Beauregard. "Great heavens, girl!" screeched Mrs. Beauregard. "You're blowing up like a balloon." "Like a blueberry," said Mr. Wonka. "Call a doctor!" shouted Mrs. Beauregard. "Prick her with a pin," said one of the other fathers. "Save her!" cried Mrs. Beauregard, wringing her hands. But there was no saving her now. Her body was swelling up and changing shape at such a rate that within a minute it had turned into nothing less than an enormous round blue ball. A gigantic blueberry, in fact. And all that remained of Violet Beauregard herself was a tiny pair of legs and a tiny pair of arms sticking out of the great round fruit with a little round head on top. "It always happens like that," sighed Mr. Wonka. "I've tried it 20 times in a testing room on 20 Oompa Loompas, and every one of them finished up as a blueberry. It's most annoying. I just can't understand it." "But I don't want a blueberry for a daughter," yelled Mrs. Beauregard. "Put her back to what she was this instant." Mr. Wonka clicked his fingers, and 10 Oompa Loompas appeared immediately at his side. "Roll Miss Beauregard into the boat," he said to them, "and take her along to the juicing room at once." "The juicing room!" cried Mrs. Beauregard. "What are they going to do to her there?" "Squeeze her," said Mr. Wonka. "We've got to squeeze the juice out of her immediately. After that, we'll just have to see how she comes out. But don't worry, my dear Mrs. Beauregard. We'll get her repaired if it's the last thing we do. I am sorry about it all. I really am." Already, the 10 Oompa Loompas were rolling the enormous blueberry across the floor of the inventing room toward the door that led to the chocolate river where the boat was waiting. Mr. and Mrs. Beauregard hurried after them. The rest of the party, including little Charlie Bucket and Grandpa Joe, stood absolutely still and watched them go. Chapter 22 is called Along the Corridor. "Well, well, well," sighed Mr. Willy Wonka. "2 naughty little children gone. 3 good little children left. I think we'd better get out of this room quickly before we lose anyone else." "But Mr. Wonka," said Charlie Bucket anxiously, "will Violet Beauregard ever be all right again, or will she always be a blueberry?" "Well, they'll dejuice her in no time flat," declared Mr. Wonka. "They'll roll her into the dejuicing machine, and she'll come out just as thin as a whistle." "But will she still be blue all over?" asked Charlie. "She'll be purple," cried Mr. Wonka. a fine, rich purple from head to toe. But there you are. That's what comes from chewing disgusting gum all day long. If you think gum is so disgusting, said Mike Teavee, then why do you make it in your factory? I do wish you wouldn't mumble, said Mr. Wonka. I can't hear a word you're saying. Come on, off we go. Hurry up, follow me. We're going into the corridors again. And so saying, Mr. Wonka scuttled along across to the far end of the inventing room and went out through a small secret door hidden behind a lot of pipes and stoves. The 3 remaining children, Veruca Salt, Mike Teavee, and Charlie Bucket, together with the 5 remaining grown-ups, followed after him. Charlie Bucket saw that they were now back in one of those long pink corridors with many other pink corridors leading out of it. Mr. Wonka was rushing along in front, turning left and right and right and left, and Grandpa Joe was saying, "Keep a good hold of my hand, Charlie. It would be terrible to get lost in here." Mr. Wonka was saying, "No time for any more messing about. We'll never get anywhere at the rate we've been going." And on he rushed, down the endless pink corridors with his black top hat perched on top of his head and his plum-colored velvet cottontails flying out behind him like a flag in the wind. They passed another door, then another and another. There were doors every 20 paces or so along the corridor now, and they all had something written on them, and strange clanking noises were coming from behind several of them, and delicious smells came wafting in through keyholes, and sometimes little jets of colored steam shot out from cracks underneath. Grandpa Joe and Charlie were half running and half walking to keep up with Mr. Wonka, but they were able to read what it said on quite a few doors as they hurried by. "Eatable marshmallow pillows," it said on one. "Marshmallow pillows are terrific," shouted Mr. Wonka as he dashed by. "They'll be all the rage when I get them into the shops. No time to go in, though. No time to go in." "Lickable wallpaper for nurseries," it said on the next door. "Lovely stuff, lickable wallpaper," cried Mr. Wonka, rushing past. "It has pictures of fruits on it, bananas, apples, oranges, grapes, pineapples, strawberries, and snozberries." "Snozberries," said Mike Teavee. "Don't interrupt," said Mr. Wonka. "The wallpaper has pictures of all these fruits printed on it, and when you lick the picture of a banana, it tastes like a banana. When you lick the picture of a strawberry, it tastes like a strawberry. And when you lick a snozberry, it tastes exactly like a snozberry." "But what does a snozberry taste like?" "You're mumbling again," said Mr. Wonka. "Speak louder next time. On we go. Hurry up." "Hot ice creams for cold days," it said on the next door. "Extremely useful for winter," said Mr. Wonka, rushing on. "Hot ice cream warms you up to no end in freezing weather. I also make hot ice cubes for putting in hot drinks. Hot ice cubes make hot drinks hotter." "Cows that give chocolate milk," it said on the next door. "Ah, my pretty little cows," cried Mr. Wonka. "How I love those cows." "But why can't we see them?" said Veruca Salt. "Why do we have to go rushing on past all these lovely rooms?" "We shall stop in time," cried Mr. Wonka. "Don't be so madly impatient." "Fizzy lifting drinks," it said on the next door. "Oh, those are fabulous," cried Mr. Wonka. "They fill you with bubbles, and the bubbles are full of a special kind of gas, and this gas is so terrifically lifting that it lifts you right off the ground just like a balloon, and up you go till your head hits the ceiling, and there you stay." "But how do you come down again?" asked little Charlie. "You do a burp, of course," said Mr. Wonka. "You do a great, big, long, rude burp, and up comes that gas, and down you go. But don't drink it outdoors. There's no knowing how high you'll end up, and you'll be carried off if you do that. I gave some to an old Oompa Loompa once out in the backyard, and he went up and up and up and up and disappeared out of sight. It was very sad. I never saw him again." "He should have burped," Charlie said. "Of course he should have burped," said Mr. Wonka. "I stood there shouting, 'Burp! Burp! Burp! Or you'll never come down again!' But he didn't. Or he couldn't. Or he wouldn't. I don't know which. Maybe he was too polite. He must be on the moon by now." On the next door it said, "Round candies, square candies that look round." "Wait!" cried Mr. Wonka, skidding suddenly to a halt. "I am very proud of my square candies that look round. Let's take a peek." All right, boys and girls, join me tomorrow as we read the next chapter. Chapter 23 is called Square Candies That Look Round. I hope you're having a great day. Enjoy the beautiful weather that we're having. It's nice and warm. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.